All right, folks. My guest today is Mr. Matt Bentley. Matt is a registered nurse who has done just about everything there is to do to be a nurse, and now has moved on into nurse education. Professor Matt, if I may, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I appreciate it a lot.
Thanks for having me.
So, you have been a nurse for how long, sir?
So RN 12 years. Prior to that, I was at LPN for 14 years. And prior to that, I was EMT, patient care tech, burn tech, whatever you want to call it, whatever tech role there was, I probably did it in the medical field. So,
Okay. And you also bring some military experience as well. I'm going to date you a little bit, and you were an enlisted man in the Army during the first Iraq War, Desert Shield and Storm, right?
correct. Yep. Yeah. So I joined the Army when I was 18. And that's got me on the path to healthcare. That's got me on the path to being a ER nurse and a nurse educator. I always tie back to my time in the Army. So it was 1981 here in the Valley. I was the oldest child of four. I was an angry young man at 18 working on a farm. My dad had a dairy farm. That's why we moved to Cache Valley. That was his midlife crisis, as I call it. And his dream was always to have a dairy farm. So I think I was 11 when we moved here and started the farm. I was a city kid prior to that, really. So anyway, growing up on the farm, taught hard work, all those good things. Like I said, I just realized then that there was kind of more to life. And it was kind of funny because after I graduated, I had friends going on LDS missions and didn't want to go. And my mom goes, have you ever thought about joining the National Guard? Because my dad did some time in the Guard. And I was like, oh, no, I don't want to go do that. Almost a year later, I was in the recruiting office going through MEPS, signing papers. And honestly, the only reason I ended up being a medic was the MEPS intake recruiter was giving me all the things back. This was 81. So back then it was like infantry. It was like a pretty hefty bonus of like 10 grand. Speaker, NBC. So those of you with military background know what I'm talking about. He goes, hey, we have this combat medic specialist. And I was like, well, what's that? And he goes, well, it's like a paramedic. You know how recruiters spin it.
No, of course.
Now back in the day, and Sebastian probably knows this TV show, look up, it's called Emergency with Johnny and Roy. They're paramedics in LA. So when he said paramedic, that was one of my favorite shows growing up. So I was like, done. Where do I sign? And they were like, well, you can go to Germany for a year and a half. And I was like, I couldn't sign papers
fast enough.
Yeah. So a month later, I'm like getting to know my friendly neighborhood drill sergeant and getting the warm and loving conversations that you get from drill instructors. So actually I did, sorry, not to go back and have the whole podcast be about my military
stuff. That's okay. Basic that's what we do here.
But yeah, did basic training at Fort Knox. It was kind of funny because half the mix was kind of like, people, inner city folks, a lot of people from Puerto Rico, just kind of like the good generic melting pot mix that you get in the military, no matter what branch you're in. And being raised like on the farm for the last 7 or 8 years, I was like, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I was just like, oh, okay, let's get up. Let's go do our stuff. And all the other people are like moaning and groaning and stuff like that. And I was like, this is kind of actually sleeping in. So,
right.
And I went to San Antonio for medic training. Back at that point in time, medic training was not super awesome like it is now. I learned a fair amount of medicine from my dad, not practicing on cows, like doing injections and IVs and stuff like that.
Right.
And then I had a little time with the Boy Scouts, had my first day merit badge. So it's like a lot of that came really naturally to me when I was in medic school. Enjoyed medic school, enjoyed San Antonio. I still enjoy, San Antonio. Anyway, so the Army actually put me through, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about college, don't follow my plan, okay? Don't follow the go to college every 10 to 15 years plan, get it all done at once. So in 95, they sent me to LPN school. I was in Texas, San Antonio for a year. They had a contract at that point in time. There's a big ramp up for LPNs. And this was 4 years after going to Desert Storm. So I was down there, got paid to go to school for a year, got school paid for.
So this would have been like 94, 95. Yeah.
So, and at that point in time, I was an E-6. That's what I retired as. But because there was no rank in aviation in the reserves. And as you know, being in the Guard in aviation, it was just like there weren't promotion slots. Yeah. But I enjoyed, I was in the medevac unit. I was in for 12 years, 11 or 12 years in Salt Lake. Did a lot of stuff, did Desert Storm with them. We were attached to the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. So I saw a lot of smoking, blown up Iraqi tanks and a lot of Iraqi guys wandering in the desert, heading back to wherever they came from and things like that. So, interesting experience. We could have a whole show talking about desert.
I'm sure we could. There's a whole history lesson to be had there.
Yeah. There's Desert Storm is interesting. I mean, I would not trade that experience for my life. There's, I'm sure there's a little PTSD stuff from it. Like everybody probably has some, and if you've ever been in uniform, but anyway, I was working after my LPN. I did home care for a little while, did peds home care. And prior to going to LPN school, I was working like safety at manufacturing places like Icon. And, Sebastian knows where these places are here where we are locally. They made treadmills and exercise equipment. So anyway, when I got done with that, I had my LPN license. I ended up at a company called Presto as occupational nurse. And I went to Lazy Boy, and after in 2008, Lazy Boy closed the plant, and I always wanted to go back and get my RN. And my wife goes, "Well, I guess you're going back to school now." So I found a private college that took my LPN stuff, took a lot of my credits that I had smattering over the years, and it was super expensive, but it was better than waiting for 3 years to try to get into a program. And they shot me out the other end. And I was lucky enough to pass NCLEX the first time. And I got a job at Cache Valley Hospital in the ER at that point in time. And I became an RN. I was working for auto leave as a nurse in Ogden. Got hurt down at Brigham City during med surge, and about the same time I got hired on PRN, as we call it, or on call at Cache Valley Hospital. And I hadn't done real emergency care for a long time, and it was totally different as being a new grad RN. As kind of like, oh wait, this is a whole new learning curve, and
the mindset's totally different.
Yeah, we can tell. Or maybe we'll get to ER stories in a bit, but. Anyway, opportunity came up to go full time in January, and the nurse manager at that point in time, Nikki, and I was like, "Hey, what's the chances I could go full time?" Because I was getting cut shifts at Brigham. I liked Brigham Hospital, but just kept getting cut. And
yeah,
she's like, "Let me check into it." And as they say, the rest is history. I've been there with HCA for 11 years, most of it at Cache Valley. It was 11 years a couple weeks ago, and in the ER. And great crew, really like it. A few years back, another friend that we work with, she's the nurse educator now. We both blame each other now for going back to school to get our master's degree in nursing education, and that's what I'm doing now, and really like it.
And now another mutual friend, Jen, is working on her master's and hates your guts for it.
She decided to go. I told her, I said, "There, just bite the bullet and do it for another year and be done."
Yep. So she's been working on hers for at least a year now, and
cool.
God love Jen. She wears a bunch of hats at the hospital.
Oh yeah.
And then to say, oh, let me juggle this flaming pile of garbage called school
Yeah.
on top of all my work responsibilities. Jen's an amazing woman. So maybe
and ladies and gentlemen,
she'll be a guest on the podcast, hopefully.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you think online learning is easy, try a program, because it had been, I think, probably once again, 11 or 12 years since, now 10 years, actually. It was 10 years since I got my RN. It was associates. So Western Governors had an associate to master's in nursing education program. And that's what Christy and I did. And my wife's an English teacher. She teaches junior high English. So I had a great proofreader, but I have never written so many freaking papers in my life. And to this day, my wife's like, we still tease each other, because one of the first ones I had her proofread for me was on hand washing, which is like a good basic 101 nursing subject for the class and skill. And she starts reading it after a full day of teaching. And she's like, tell me this is not 9 pages on how to do hand washing. And I was like, oh yeah. I said, welcome to going back to school for master's. It's 9 pages on how to do hand washing. So
in APA format.
APA format.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it was a good experience. And, we got the bachelor's in the middle. They actually did a bachelor's degree. So we could say we had our BSN and thought we were cool for a little while. And
right.
Then we got our MSN, and I thought I was cool for about a minute. And then I was started in nursing education. And then there's days when I'm like doing emails and typing stuff. And I was like, I really have a master's degree, after I go back and reread stuff. And I was just like, boy, anywho.
Yeah. So our paths are really similar. You currently teach at the college that I went to nursing school, Nightingale College, and they're out of Salt Lake City now. When I attended, they were based out of Ogden. Circling back to online education and the difficulty there, COVID has really shaken things up. How has that changed nursing education from your vantage point as an educator?
So just to kind of paint a picture, because I don't want it to sound like I've been a nursing educator forever. It's been a little over a year, but I will say it has been challenging, because I currently work full-time for Nightingale. And so this happened about March 2020. So if you happen to run across this podcast in the future in a time capsule and you're super bored or you have insomnia and listening to me, you'll know what time I'm talking about. But so it was like, we started to lose. So in nursing school, if you're listening to this and don't know, you have to do clinical hours. You have to go so many hours, and usually you start out in long-term care, also known as nursing homes. So all the nursing homes, we're taking those precautions about bringing people from the outside in because of the virus. And well, they should, that's the most susceptible population at that time, that was what we were starting to see in the pandemic. So anyway, long story short.
And at the outset, we can say that they went into total lockdown.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was like, we're not having students, not having visitors. Some places, like even here where we're living, I had staff, like they scheduled them for a week straight. You ate there, you slept there, did your job, and they took those precautions. So anyway, what that meant for us as a college, and even other local colleges, there's 2 other local colleges where we live in the Logan, Utah area. So those 2 programs actually came to a stop. So the one thing that I've totally enjoyed about Nightingale, and I don't want this to be a commercial for Nightingale,
of course,
is there are this is such a diverse college and a diverse staff. It took them a weekend to take all of our stuff and say, okay, we're going online, and we use a platform called Canvas. If you're familiar with it, listening, that has so it'd be like Matt Bentley, here's your student profile, here's all your classes, this is where you submit your assignments, yada, yada, yada. to me, that's pretty freaking amazing. And because we found programs that as a nurse relate to your stuff. Now, granted, they're kind of video game format, I guess, for the best way to describe it. But you're going in and it's like you're a floor nurse and you have to see 3 patients and it gives you their vital signs and their scenarios and what they're have for. But it makes you do critical thinking. We found we use a charting program that's like an e-charting simulation program, and similar to the one we use in charting the ER. For benchmark pass-offs in the higher level, we found a virtual reality program. You didn't have to wear the goggles, but it timed you, gave you, that's what we used last semester, and you had 20 minutes to go through an ER scenario of one patient. And you had to think through the process of like, okay, well, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to check, airway, I need to check breathing, my vital signs, and call the doctor and that kind of stuff. So it's been interesting to see, because I'm a lot bit of a nerd, and I like technology, and I like cool new programs, and I like, if I could have the money to buy whiz bang gadgets, I probably would. I kind of dig technology. It doesn't really scare me. I like to go in and play with it and poke at it and tweak it, because I'm like, I know I'm not going to break it. And if I get to anything that says launch missiles towards Russia, I'm going to stop, hopefully. But anyway, so that's kind of really how it's affected nursing education. And I know other programs have adapted as well and had to adapt. I think the interesting thing that people are going to see in nursing education, and I started saying this a few months back, and I might even share it with you, is my concern is that there's not enough nurses in the pipeline for when this pandemic is over to shoot out the end to cover all the nurses that are going to say, you know what, I've been doing this for 20 years, 25, 30 years. I'm done. I can't wear PPE for 12 hours a day. And there was a nursing shortage prior to this. And I think in a year and a half, it's going to be more
It's going to be
critical.
even worse. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you're thinking about nursing as a profession, this would be a great time to get into it.
Yeah. And I have several friends that ask me all the time, oh, what do I need to do to get into nursing? What programs are good? And I tell them, I say, nursing is not an option. Nursing is not something that you say, oh, I was in a communications program, or I was in a family sciences program. And then you're like, well, that didn't pan out, so I'm just going to go to nursing.
Right.
Nursing is not that field where it's just an option. It's not something that you say, oh, I'm going to feel it out for a semester or two. That nursing doesn't work that way, and nursing education doesn't work that way. It's not,
right.
There's no real feel out process. And I tell folks,
you're all in.
Yeah, you're all in from the beginning. You are totally invested. So I tell folks, and I tell my friends that say, I want to go to nursing school. My advice to them is, one, make sure that you have the availability to be totally invested. You have to, the best ability is availability, and you've got to be available for it. And then number two, I tell folks, don't underestimate that the market, meaning, yes, we're in a nursing shortage, but you've got to be able to see, 2, 5, 10 years down the road. Am I going to be able to be employed where I currently live? Now, we live in Cache Valley. We have a small community. There are nursing jobs available. Are they prime nursing jobs? Most of them are not. Okay. And that's right. That's just simple truth, right? Most of them are not right. the ideal. Most of them are not what we would call super sexy, right? But they're jobs.
But they are jobs, right?
But they are jobs. So is the ideal job that you're looking for currently available where you live?
Right.
And those are my two things that I tell folks. If you're available, then go for it.
Right.
And then you have to understand your current job market where you live.
Right. The other thing that I'll add to that too is, like, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about it and you're like, well, I'm 30 or I'm 40 or I'm 50 or whatever. It's like, who cares?
Who cares?
I was 48. I was 48 years old and I had a classmate that she turned 50.
Yeah.
When we were in class. I love seeing learners that are like in their 30s and in their 40s. And I've got a lot of, like, they put their pictures up and it's like, there's husbands and there's 4 kids and these are younger kids.
Yeah.
And does it suck? Yeah, it sucks.
Yep.
And is it hard? Yeah, it's hard. But you know what? You can go wherever you want to go in nursing. And it's like, do I want to be a psych nurse? No. Do I want to work long-term care? No. I like going in, like when we could go into long-term care and like visit the patients and the staff. I liked visiting the staff because for me as a nurse, it was like, not that it wasn't sexy, it just wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
But God,
there's folks that love that.
Love that. And it's like, I so appreciate that about nursing and about that fact that people can just go and do that and find their niche. And it's like, it might take a year or two and you might like get yelled at by a couple of doctors, but guess what? That's the job. And it's like, you know what? Most of the time when the docs get angry or cranky, they'll circle back around and be like, okay, sorry, I was wrong. You know, I didn't mean to handle it that way or something like it. We've both experienced that. And you can't take it personal. And, you know, it's a tough job. I think most jobs are tough. But here's the one thing, sorry, it's kind of like my little humble opinion. Ramblings of the Old Nurse.
There you go.
Episode 1. Episode 2007, if you're a Nightingale fan. But no, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. But what I was going to say is, you know, it's a hard profession because you've got families that you're interacting with. You've got your patient that you're caring about. You get invested in your patient. You get invested in your families. And you kind of take some stuff home with you and you kind of, you know, you get some baggage that comes with it. And the sad part is, I think it's changing a little bit, but America doesn't really look at nursing as a professional profession, if that makes sense.
It certainly does in my mind.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people look at it as, and please, I don't mean to look down on people that are tradesmen because, you know, I came from an agriculture background. My brother are successful farmers. You know, I think their trade people are great people, but, you know, people that are taking care of you in the hospital, I don't think people realize the amount of education that you go through to be a nurse, even in LPN, even at the LPN level. You know, those are hard classes. That's like your first time of like, you know, becoming a nurse. And it's like when you have to, you know, Sebastian and I work in the ER and it's like I'm sure everybody's watched a medical drama and you hear the alarms going off in the background or in the crisis. And it's like, think about that your nurse hears that stimulation. They look at your numbers and in with what, 30 to 60 seconds, we make an assessment on you, we make a plan, and we implement that.
Mm-hmm.
EMS does the same thing, but theirs is like in the ditch or in the snow or in the mud.
Right.
You know, we did that role in the military. And it, you know, I think that background is super helpful in nursing, but I wish people in America would kind of look at that of like, you know, of like, oh, they're just the nurse. And because we get that, you know, it's like
we're the doctor helpers.
Yeah, we're the doctor helpers. Or how many times have you had patients ask you, oh, are you doing this before you get into medical school? You know, I'll Lord Falker and meet the parents. You know, it's like, oh, this is what I want to do.
This is it.
You know, somehow through my 58 years in life, this is where I've ended up. And I enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah. So I remember I graduated nursing school. I was 31. I was just barely 31. And then as part of my like original batch of nurses, I was like the second or third oldest. And then halfway through my program, we brought in LPNs. And then, you know, these are folks who'd already had jobs, had already had experience. And then I think the oldest nurse that we brought in from the LPNs was like 62. So
was it a her or a him?
A she, yes, a her. So like,
good for her.
Yeah. And to your point, you know, at any age, you can switch it up. At any age, you can do something different. I would say, and I haven't experienced all facets of online learning or all the intricacies of online learning. I do remember Nightingale's brand of it when I went through, and it takes it. If you are not a good independent learner, online learning is not for you. Right. Online learning is not for you.
That's a fair point.
If you don't have your own self drive, your own work ethic that says, hey, I need to do my work on time and do good quality work, which you should have anyway, but especially in the online learning space, it's not for you. It's not for you.
Well, and don't you think too, though, that translates over a lot into nursing, though? Because if you're like, you know, we can't, when we get a patient, when we get a patient in the ER, it's like there's that expectation that you're going to be taken back, you know, and that's one of the things that people like about the hospital we come to. It's a smaller facility, it's lower census, but you get in right away.
Yeah.
And I think everybody there has that ethic of like, okay, there's a job to do. Let's get up and do it. This is our thing. Let's do
work. Yeah, let's do work. And online programs offer that. You know, if you're highly motivated, a self-starter, online learning is something that you can do well and excel at.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, traditional programs such as, you know, Bridgeland or Utah State or Weber State, those programs have, maybe not Utah State, Weber State and Bridgeland Technical College especially, have long histories of successful students in the traditional learning environment. You know, Bridgeland has like a 98% first time LPN pass rate.
Right?
Yeah. Well, for their LPNs, it's like 98%. And I think it's almost the same for their RNs working through Weber or through Utah State now. I mean, they're like, and that's certainly not to gloss over the online places like Nightingale or Stevens Henniger or other such places. It's just different. It's just different. It's just different.
Yeah. And honestly, and sorry, I use this analogy, but I don't want to use it just for my college, but I think it's for most of the private colleges. Is if you remember the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation TV show.
It'll be on tonight on CBS.
Yeah, it was like those programs are kind of like the Island of Misfit Toys. We're the Island of Misfit nursing programs, but here's the reason why.
They're anomalous.
They fit. They go to where the learner is. And it's convenient, and we can get you in. There's not a 2 or 3 year waiting list.
Yep.
You don't have to have a 4.0, to get in.
It'll cost you.
It will cost you.
It'll cost you.
Expensive. They are expensive. I'm not going to lie. I went to a private college.
Yep.
I went to Stevens Henniger for my associates, and it was expensive, but. How many people at the hospital they work with that went through Nightingales along with you? You got Kelly over on the floor, Beck and OB, Misty when she was there in the OR. It's like, I mean, there's quite a few folks,
Yep.
that have done it for that very reason of like, I can't afford in my life to wait
Yeah.
4 more years.
Yeah.
And I look at Beck and Kelly as private examples. Sorry if you guys are listening, we're talking about you, but it's like, I saw them. They were both there when I started as CNAs and techs in different places of the hospital.
Right.
They're amazing people.
Yeah.
They have amazing interactions with patients. They would come over and help. One day, Beck was there before she precepted with me and taking notes, and our patient coded.
Yep.
And she was right there, jumping in and doing her thing. So it was like, that's why I'm glad that there's private colleges out there for those people that are just like, I love this field. I know I want to do this.
Yeah.
And we know they're good in it. And it's like they pay the large sum, but it's like, man, in those 3 years that you'd be on a waiting list, you pretty much have got that paid off by the increase in your salary.
Yep.
So that's how I look at it. So anyway.
And that was my primary reason for attending such a place as Nightingale. I remember I was driving down I-15 just south of Brigham City, and heading south towards Salt Lake City for a military weekend. And I remember looking on the left side of the highway, and there was a billboard that said, "No wait lists, become a nurse now." Nightingale College, and there was a 1-800 number. And I remember, Mike, I'm going to have to search that when I have a minute. And I got home from my weekend, and I got online and I Google searched it, and I called him, and I talked to a person that wasn't in a call center, and I got a campus tour. And at first blush, and I know that Nightingale College has grown since 2013, 2014.
A lot,
right? At first blush, this was the most chintzy fly-by-night joint I'd ever seen. Right? And however, the numbers didn't lie. They were graduating students, and they were graduating students that were passing the NCLEX.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting down with a counselor, and they're like, "You're a prime candidate. You're a kid who doesn't have a perfect college record, who, has a desire, has a drive, has previous experience. Yeah, and they gave me a shot.
Yeah.
Now, it also helped that all of my tuition checks cashed. So it also helped that my tuition checks cashed, and they never bounced. So, that helps. Now, they afforded me an opportunity where traditional nursing schools didn't. I'd applied when I was living in West Virginia. I applied to West Virginia University. I applied to Fairmont State University. I applied to Marshall University. I applied to a local community. Well, it was a branch of West Virginia University at Parkersburg. I applied to all those places, and then I ended up moving out west, and I looked at Bridgerland, and it was even more competitive. It was even more competitive. And there was no plausible way that I was going to be able to gain entrance into a traditional brick and mortar school for nursing. And Nightingale provided that avenue. Nightingale and the other schools similar are much like Uber and Lyft. They're disruptors.
Right. And that's a good way to look at it. That's a great analogy.
They're a disruptor in the nursing education field.
So another term that's used too is like educational deserts, and that's kind of what they go for as well. Online programs is kind of underserved areas of like, that there's a need for nurses there,
mm-hmm.
but there's no brick and mortar school. And please don't take anything that either one of us say wrong if you're listening to this about brick and mortar schools, because I think we both think that,
mm-hmm.
programs work, it's just not, I have never felt in my life that there's one specific thing for everything in regards for training, if that makes sense. You know, it's
Right.
like some people, you know, if a brick or mortar school, if you want to get your degree from the University of Utah nursing program and that's your goal in life, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Get it. And it's like but I think the reality is once you become a little bit older and then you're just like, I just want the RN behind my name.
Yep. And you'll
Increase my
go
salary. And it's
wherever
like,
can afford that
yeah.
opportunity.
As you know, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, any dream will do. You know, it's a song.
Right. Right.
So, any place will work, but you know, and they're most, you know, they have to be accredited by the states. And I mean, there's some oversight that goes on with these programs. I don't
Oh
want
yeah.
people to think that, you know, it's like, you know, it's like the traveling band show or something like that, and you just get, you know, here's your, you know, let
Yeah.
me pull out my printer and print you up a diploma. It's like,
Yeah.
no,
It does not come out of a Cracker Jack box.
no, it's legit, folks.
Yeah.
It has to be legit if you're sitting for NCLEX,
Yep.
and NCLEX is a national review. So anyway,
Yep. And I love telling people, they're like, oh, you know, is it easy? Is it easy to become a nurse? And I tell people all the time, and I say this jokingly, but you and I both know every joke has a little bit of truth
a
to
little
it,
bit of
right?
truth. Yeah.
I tell everybody, you can train a monkey to be a nurse. You can.
Right.
You can train anybody to do and have the skills that we have, right? I tell people that the difference between that trained monkey and a nurse is that I can sit down next to your bed and talk to you. I can sit down and hold your hand and cry with you and laugh with you. And you know, there is more than just medicine and the administration of medicine that goes
Right.
into
Right.
nursing skill, right?
Agreed.
You could memorize all the checklists in the world. You can be an A plus 4.0 student, but if you're not able to sit down with a patient or a family in crisis and need and take 3 minutes and say, I hear you and I understand you and I'm going to take the best care of you I can,
Mm-hmm.
that's a difference maker. That's a
Yeah.
difference maker.
Yeah.
And
Or, well, I was going to say, or looking at someone and they're looking back at you and saying, am I going to die?
yeah,
And you have to answer that. And you have to
yeah,
answer it truthfully. And it's
yeah,
like, yeah, you are. I'm sorry. We have done everything that we can do for you, but we're
yeah,
here.
yep. And you know, with the advent of COVID and restrictions and new hospital policies, it seems daily. Um, you know, working where we have worked, you know, we have been able to, I don't want to say bend the rules or make our own rules, but the emergency room is its own thing, right? It's its own business, more or less. I don't want to say it's separate from the hospital, but it certainly does its own thing in regards to
Right.
the hospital, right? And I can picture plain as day, um, these few families that were in a crisis time. There was a severe car wreck, several patients in at the same time, families everywhere, families in the waiting room, families outside, parents crying outside. And you know, I'm with a nurse who is younger, not only in age but a younger nurse, and we're a little bit swamped, we're overwhelmed, we call for help. And I say, you know what, you know, in my mind anyway, I'm saying, piss on policy. We're getting these families together. COVID be damned. We're going to give these families an opportunity to sit with their loved ones who are hurt for a few minutes, and that you can still be compassionate
Right.
and keep people safe.
Right.
You can still afford people some semblance of normalcy in order to keep their lives from completely crumbling.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's something I tell people on the regular is, you know, folks don't need just medicine. They don't need just doctoring. there's other stuff that go into taking care of people.
Well, how many patients have we seen in our little ER? I mean, people come in and it's older patients, but it's like it's something that could be handled at their doctor's office. But I feel the main reason that they come in is because they're lonely, or they want some sort of like, compassion or interaction, or to share a story, or
Yep.
or something like that, because there's nobody around.
And that's becoming a bigger and bigger deal, not just in our locality, with friends that I'm still good with. I ask them, hey, are you seeing an uptick of people that are just coming in, not necessarily with not real complaints, but people that are just looking to have somebody to talk to.
Right.
And we could do a whole nother 2-hour episode on mental health and mental health.
Right. That's why I really have loved, because I've seen it on a few occasions, and I've tried to stress this. Like last semester, I was doing more interactions with the learners, aka students. But it was like, I think one thing that needs to be stressed is, is just that kindness that you talk about. Is like, it doesn't cost you anything to be kind, and you don't have to just be kind as a nurse. You can be, kind as a human, being. And it was kind of funny because when we were all switching to online and doing things like that, I was in charge of the hub in Brigham, and so I sent out like this big email to our learners, being like, okay, this is the plan, this is where we're going. We're not going to end up meeting here together, because we formed a bond and things like that. And I was like, but I want you to take that we've developed here and go to your neighbors and develop it there, and go to these people in your community and be, kind to them, because guess what? Everybody's freaking out. We were all freaking out in March and April and things like that. And it's like, now it's kind of funny because, I think we're kind of freaking out now because of the uptake and things like that, but I don't feel like there's as much total, at least from what I'm seeing, pandemonium and chaos of like freaking out. You go to Home Depot. I went to Home Depot over Saturday. I wore my mask and got my stuff to fix my toilet. And I didn't figure, people were still in there. And I was joking with the Home Depot lady because it was kind of busy. I was like, oh, how was Black Friday? And she's like, today's busier than Black Friday was. So it's just, it's just kind of like, this is, I find it really interesting as humans, what we like adapt to. It's like, okay, so there's a virus here. All right, let's do our thing and follow the guidelines and go on. But
so
anyway.
It's funny. You and I are familiar with this phrase: adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Overcome, yeah.
Yep. So you have an obstacle, you have something put in front of you, whether it's a task or a mission or whatever, and then you're told just figure it out.
Right.
One of my most recent lines that I've been telling people is, we are living right now the scientific method, where you make a hypothesis and then you've got to test it 1,000 times to see if it works. And if it works, then you tell everybody about it and say, this is best practice. And unfortunately, sometimes we say something and we're like, hey, this is what we want to do. And then we try it a few times and we're like, wow, that's epically bad. We should not do that.
That's bad.
We should not do that.
If you're in manufacturing, that's called process improvement or quality improvement.
Right. And with COVID and in healthcare, especially, like, this is the scientific method at work in our lives currently. And it's kind of like, it's funny and kind of sad. Like, we are the science experiment.
Yeah.
We are the science experiment. And that sucks that we are the living science experiment. But this is how stuff works. People want to complain, to wear a mask or not wear a mask. We're still finding stuff out daily about stuff that we need to do and stuff that works and stuff that doesn't work. So
right. Right. Yeah, I don't know, interesting time. Interesting time. So,
Matt, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been a real
well,
pleasure.
thanks.
This has been a real pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Maybe we need to do it again. So,
Sure. Yeah, we'll do. I'm always up for more ramblings of the old nurse. So,
and maybe you and I need to make a spinoff. I said that from the beginning. We need to do a spinoff here.
ramblings,
For
yeah.
for those of you listening and watching, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends about us if you're able to. Donate a few bucks my way.
Is that two people watching? 2 people watching or listening?
What, I don't care who's watching and listening. If they want to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Both of you share to 2 other people.
Yes, and tell everybody else. And Tyler, my dude here, just has to be.
Hi, Tyler.
Has to come say hi. So like, comment, subscribe, share. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it a lot.
You bet. Have a good day.